The divorce papers felt heavy in Alan Herzog's hands. 3 years of marriage ended with a signature. His wife Eloise stood across from him in their small apartment, arms crossed, face cold. "Are you going to sign or not?" she snapped. Alan's hands trembled as he held the pen. "Eloise, please, can we talk about this? Can we try counseling one more time?" "Counseling?" She laughed bitterly. "Alan, I'm tired of being poor. I'm tired of struggling. I'm tired of you." The words cut through him like knives. He looked around their modest one-bedroom apartment in Chicago. The furniture was old but clean. The walls needed paint, but they had planned to do it together someday. Now there would be no someday. "I work 2 jobs," Alan said quietly. "I'm trying my best." "Your best isn't good enough," Eloise replied. "Look at my friends. Jessica's husband just bought her a BMW. Tanya's husband took her to Paris for her birthday. What have you given me? Nothing." Alan thought about the handmade birthday card he'd given her last month, the dinner he'd cooked after working a 12-hour shift, the way he'd held her when she cried about losing her job. Apparently, none of that mattered. "I gave you my love," he said softly. Eloise rolled her eyes. "Love doesn't pay bills, Alan. Love doesn't buy designer bags or take me to nice restaurants." She grabbed her phone and showed him a photo. A tall man in an expensive suit stood next to a Mercedes-Benz. "This is Thomas," she said. "He owns 3 car dealerships. We've been talking for 2 months." Alan felt his heart break into pieces. "You've been cheating on me?" "It's not cheating when the marriage is already dead," Eloise said coldly. "Thomas wants to marry me. He can give me the life I deserve." "And what about our vows?" Alan asked. "For better or worse, for richer or poorer?" "Those are just words," Eloise said. "I want more than words. I want money. I want status. I want to live, not just survive." Alan finally signed the papers. His hands shook so badly he could barely write his name. Eloise snatched them immediately and smiled for the first time that day. "Finally," she said, "I'm free." As she walked toward the door with her suitcase, Alan asked one last question. "Did you ever love me?" Eloise paused but didn't turn around. "I thought I did, but love doesn't keep you warm when you can't afford to pay the heating bill." The door closed behind her. Alan sat alone in the apartment they had shared, surrounded by memories that suddenly felt like lies. Before we continue with Alan's journey, I need your help to keep bringing you these powerful stories. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button right now. It only takes 1 second, but it means the world to me. Also, smash that like button. Let's see if we can get to 1,000 likes on this video. And here's something I'm really curious about. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Are you in the US, UK, South Africa, Australia, somewhere else? I love knowing that we're building a global family here, and your comment helps this story reach even more people who need to hear it. Now, let's get back to Alan's story, because what happens next will blow your mind. Alan's best friend Thomas Thau found him 2 days later, still sitting in the same spot, still wearing the same clothes. "Man, you can't do this to yourself," Thomas said, opening the curtains. Sunlight flooded the room, making Alan squint. "She's gone," Alan said numbly. "After everything we went through together, she's just gone." Thomas sat beside him. They had been friends since college, through good times and bad. Thomas had never liked Eloise, but he'd kept quiet out of respect for Alan. "Maybe it's for the best," Thomas said gently. "How?" Alan asked. "How is this for the best? I loved her." "And she loved your potential," Thomas replied. "Not you. She loved the idea of what you could give her, not who you actually are." Alan knew Thomas was right, but it didn't make the pain any less real. Over the next few weeks, Alan threw himself into work. He worked as a delivery driver during the day and a security guard at night. He barely slept. He barely ate. He was just trying to survive each day. One morning, while delivering packages, he saw Eloise. She was getting into a red Mercedes, laughing and holding hands with Thomas, her new boyfriend. She wore a designer dress Alan recognized from a store window. It cost more than 2 months of his rent. Eloise saw him too. For a moment, their eyes met. Then she looked away quickly, as if he was nothing, as if their 3 years together had never existed. Alan continued his delivery route, but his hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. That evening, Thomas Thau visited again. He brought Chinese food and beer. "You need to eat," Thomas said, unpacking the containers. "You're losing too much weight." Alan picked at the food. She looked so happy, like leaving me was the best decision she ever made. "Maybe it was," Thomas said, "for both of you." "Why do you keep saying that?" "Because you deserve someone who sees your value," Thomas explained. "Someone who appreciates how hard you work, how kind you are, how loyal you are." Eloise only saw dollar signs. Alan's phone rang. It was an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Hello? Is this Mr. Alan Herzog?" a professional female voice asked. "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Patricia Reynolds. I'm calling from Reynolds, Martinez and Associates, a law firm in Boston. I need to schedule a meeting with you regarding your late great-uncle, Edward Herzog." Alan frowned. "My great-uncle? I don't know anyone by that name." "That's not unusual," Patricia said. "Mr. Edward Herzog passed away 3 months ago. He had no immediate family, but our research found that you are his closest living relative. I'm sorry for your loss, but I don't understand why you're calling me. Mr. Herzog, your great-uncle left an estate. We need to discuss your inheritance." Alan's heart skipped. "Inheritance? How much are we talking about?" "I'd prefer to discuss this in person," Patricia said. "Can you come to Boston? We'll cover all travel expenses." "Just give me a rough number," Alan insisted. "Is it $1,000? 5,000? Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mr. Herzog, the estate is valued at approximately $13 million. Alan dropped his phone. Thomas jumped up. "What happened? What's wrong?" Alan picked up the phone with shaking hands. "Did you just say 13 million? "Yes, Mr. Herzog. 13.2 million to be exact. It includes properties, investments, and liquid assets." Alan couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. Thomas grabbed the phone. "Hello? This is Alan's friend. Is this some kind of scam?" Patricia remained calm and professional. "I assure you this is legitimate. If you look us up, you'll find we're one of the most respected law firms in New England. I can send verification documents to Mr. Herzog's email immediately." Within minutes, Alan's email pinged. Official documents, letterheads, legal language, all confirming what Patricia had said. His great-uncle, Edward Herzog, a man he'd never met, had left him everything. Thomas stared at the documents. "This is real. Alan, this is actually real." Alan sat down slowly. $13 million. "When did this guy die?" Thomas asked. Alan checked the documents. 3 months ago. 3 months ago. Right around the time Eloise was telling him he wasn't good enough. Right when she was planning to leave him for someone with money. "She has no idea," Alan whispered. "No," Thomas agreed. "She has no idea." That night, Alan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Eloise's words. "Love doesn't pay bills. Your best isn't good enough. I want money." Now he had $13 million, more money than he'd ever dreamed of. But the woman he'd wanted to share everything with was gone. The next morning, Alan flew to Boston. The law firm was located in a sleek glass building downtown. Patricia Reynolds was a sharp woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Mr. Herzog, thank you for coming," she said, leading him to a conference room. "I know this must be overwhelming." "That's an understatement," Alan replied. Patricia laid out documents across the table. "Your great-uncle Edward was a brilliant investor. He started with nothing and built an empire. He never married, never had children. Before he died, he hired investigators to locate any living relatives. And he found me. Yes, you were working 2 jobs, paying your bills on time, staying out of trouble. He was impressed by your character." "He knew about me?" Patricia nodded. "For the last year of his life, yes. He wanted to meet you, but he became very ill very quickly. Instead, he decided to leave you everything." She pushed a document toward him. "This is yours now. 3 apartment buildings in Boston, a vacation home in Maine, several investment portfolios, and $8 million in liquid assets. Alan stared at the numbers. They didn't feel real. "There's one condition," Patricia added. Alan looked up. "Of course there is. Mr. Herzog wanted you to continue his legacy of hard work and integrity. You cannot simply quit your jobs and do nothing. You must invest in yourself. Education, business, something meaningful." Alan smiled for the first time in weeks. "I can do that." When he returned to Chicago, Alan didn't tell anyone except Thomas Thau. He continued working both jobs for 2 more weeks while he made plans. He enrolled in business school. He invested in a small delivery company that was struggling. He bought the building where his apartment was located and reduced the rent for all tenants, but he didn't change his appearance. He still wore simple clothes. He still drove his old car. He still lived in his small apartment. "Why?" Thomas asked. "You could buy a mansion. You could buy a Ferrari." "Because I don't need people to know I have money," Alan replied. "I need to know who people really are." 1 month after receiving the inheritance, Alan was shopping for groceries when he saw her again. Eloise stood in the produce section, arguing with Thomas, her boyfriend. Alan stayed out of sight and listened. "I told you I wanted the organic strawberries," Eloise snapped. "Why did you get these?" "They're $20 more expensive for the same thing," Thomas replied, clearly frustrated. "I don't care about the price. I want what I want." "Eloise, I just paid for your hair appointment, your nails, your new purse. Can you be reasonable for once?" "Reasonable?" Eloise's voice rose. "I left my husband for you because you promised me a better life. If you can't afford me, maybe I made a mistake." Alan watched Thomas's face fall. It was the same expression Alan had worn so many times during his marriage. The look of a man who was trying his best but would never be enough. Thomas saw Alan and froze. Eloise turned to see what he was looking at. "Alan?" she said, surprised. "Hello, Eloise," Alan replied calmly. She looked him up and down, taking in his simple clothes and worn shoes. "Still delivering packages?" "Something like that." She smirked. "See, Thomas, this is what I escaped. Can you imagine living like that?" Thomas looked uncomfortable. "Eloise, let's just go." "Why?" She seemed to be enjoying herself. "Alan doesn't mind, do you, Alan? You always were so understanding." Alan smiled. "I learned a lot from our marriage, Eloise. I learned what really matters." "And what's that?" she asked mockingly. "Love?" "No," Alan said. "Self-respect." He walked away, leaving Eloise and Thomas in awkward silence. That evening, Alan received a friend request on Facebook. It was from Eloise. Alan stared at the friend request from Eloise. They had unfriended each other during the divorce. Why was she reaching out now? He ignored it and went to bed. The next morning, there was a text message from an unknown number. "Hi, Alan, it's Eloise. I got your number from an old contact list. I hope you're doing well. I've been thinking about you." Alan showed the message to Thomas Thau during their weekly coffee meetup. "She's been thinking about you?" Thomas laughed. "What does that mean?" "I have no idea," Alan replied. "We haven't spoken in months. Don't respond," Thomas advised. "Nothing good can come from this." Alan agreed and deleted the message. But 2 days later, Eloise sent another one. "I know things ended badly between us. I was wondering if we could meet for coffee. I'd like to apologize properly." Alan was curious despite himself. She wants to apologize. Thomas wasn't convinced. "Eloise? Apologize? That woman doesn't know how to say sorry." But Alan's curiosity got the better of him. He responded, "Fine. Saturday at 2 p.m., Java House on 5th Street. Saturday arrived. Alan dressed in his usual simple clothes, jeans and a plain t-shirt. He arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early and chose a table by the window. Eloise walked in 20 minutes late, carrying a designer handbag Alan recognized from a recent shopping trip with Thomas. She wore expensive sunglasses and a dress that probably cost more than Alan's monthly grocery budget used to be. "Alan, hi," she said, taking off her sunglasses. She looked him up and down, and he saw something flicker in her eyes. Disappointment? You look, the same. Thanks, I think, Alan replied. You wanted to talk? Eloise ordered an expensive latte and sat down. She played with her nails, clearly uncomfortable. I've been thinking a lot lately, she began. About us. About how things ended. Okay. I was harsh, she continued. Maybe too harsh. I said some things I didn't mean. Alan waited. He wasn't going to make this easy for her. The truth is, Eloise said, leaning forward, I miss what we had. What did we have, Eloise? We had chemistry. We had history. We understood each other. Alan almost laughed. We understood each other? Eloise, you told me my love wasn't enough because it didn't come with a BMW. She flushed. I was angry when I said that. You were honest when you said that, Alan corrected. For the first time in our marriage, you were completely honest. Eloise looked down. Things with Thomas aren't working out. I'm sorry to hear that. He's not who I thought he was, she continued. He seems successful, but he's actually in debt. The car dealerships are struggling. He took out loans he can't pay back. Alan finally understood. So you're here because Thomas is broke? No, Eloise said quickly. I'm here because I realized I made a mistake. We had something real, Alan. We had love. We had love, Alan agreed. But you didn't want it. You wanted money. People change, Eloise insisted. I've changed. I see things differently now. Really? Alan challenged. So if I'm still delivering packages and working as a security guard, you want to get back together? Eloise hesitated. It was only a split second, but Alan saw it. She was doing calculations in her head, trying to figure out what to say. Of course, she finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. I just want you, Alan. Alan stood up. I don't believe you, Eloise. Thanks for the coffee, but I need to go. Wait, Eloise grabbed his arm. Please, just listen. I know I hurt you. I know I was wrong, but everyone deserves a second chance, right? Alan pulled his arm away gently. I gave you 3 years of second chances. Every time you complained about our apartment, every time you compared me to your friends' husbands, every time you made me feel like I wasn't enough, those were all chances to appreciate what we had. You didn't want them. He walked out of the coffee shop, leaving Eloise sitting alone. That evening, Eloise called him 15 times. She sent 20 text messages. Alan blocked her number. But Eloise wasn't giving up. She started showing up at places she knew Alan would be. His apartment building, the grocery store, the gym. 1 week later, Alan was leaving his apartment when Eloise appeared from her car parked across the street. Alan, please, you have to talk to me, she said desperately. Eloise, I have nothing to say to you. But I have things to say to you, she insisted. I was stupid. I was materialistic. I didn't know what I had until I lost it. That's a nice speech, Alan said. Did you practice it? I mean it. Eloise's eyes filled with tears. Thomas left me. I lost my job. I'm living with my mother. Everything fell apart after I left you. Alan felt a twinge of sympathy but pushed it away. I'm sorry you're going through a hard time, but that's not my problem anymore. Alan, we were married, Eloise said. That has to mean something. It did mean something, Alan replied. To me, not to you. He walked to his car. Eloise followed him. I heard you're still working 2 jobs, she said. That must be hard. Alan stopped. How do you know that? I asked around. I wanted to know how you were doing. Actually, I quit the security job, Alan said. I'm focusing on other things now. What other things? None of your business. Eloise stepped closer. Alan, we could start over. We could do it right this time. I've learned my lesson. I know what matters now. Alan looked at her carefully. Her designer clothes looked less new than before. Her handbag had a scuff mark. Her hair needed touching up at the roots. She was trying to maintain an image she could no longer afford. Eloise, let me ask you something, Alan said. If I told you right now that I'll be working these jobs forever, that I'll never be rich, that we'd always live in a small apartment, would you still want to get back together? Eloise opened her mouth, but no words came out. That's what I thought, Alan said. You don't want me. You want what you think I can give you. That's not true, Eloise protested weakly. It is true, Alan said. You've never loved me for who I am. You loved me for who you hoped I'd become. And when I didn't become that person fast enough, you left. He got in his car and drove away, watching Eloise become smaller in his rearview mirror. Thomas Thau called him that night. Bro, you won't believe this. Eloise tried to add me on Facebook. Me, your best friend. Alan laughed. What did she want? She asked about you. Asked if you were seeing anyone. Asked if I knew how you were doing financially. What did you tell her? I told her to leave you alone, Thomas said. But Alan, she's getting desperate. You need to be careful. I know, Alan replied. The next day was Saturday. Alan spent the morning viewing a property he was thinking of investing in, a small restaurant that was for sale. The owner was retiring and wanted to pass it to someone who would care for it. As Alan was leaving the restaurant, his phone buzzed. It was an email from Patricia Reynolds. Mr. Herzog, I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to inform you that your investment portfolio has grown significantly. Current value, $14.3 million. Please schedule a call to discuss strategy. Best regards, Patricia. Alan smiled. The money was growing, but more importantly, he was growing. He was taking business classes. He was learning about investments. He was building something meaningful. That evening, Alan attended a small business networking event. He wore a simple button-down shirt and dress pants, nothing fancy, nothing that screamed millionaire. At the event, he met a woman named Rachel. She was a kindergarten teacher who had started a charity that provided books to underprivileged children. I work 2 jobs to keep it running, Rachel explained, teaching during the day and waitressing on weekends. But seeing the kids' faces when they get new books, it's worth it. Alan was impressed. That's amazing. How long have you been doing this? 3 years, Rachel said. People think I'm crazy. My ex-boyfriend certainly did. He said I should focus on making money, not giving it away. Your ex-boyfriend sounds like an idiot, Alan said. Rachel laughed. He was, but I'm better off now. They talked for an hour. Alan found himself genuinely interested in her work, her passion, her dreams. She didn't ask what he did for a living. She didn't care about his car or his clothes. She just enjoyed the conversation. When the event ended, Alan asked for her number. I'd like to help with your charity. Maybe we can meet and discuss how I can contribute? That would be wonderful, Rachel said, smiling. As Alan drove home, he felt lighter than he had in months. Meeting Rachel reminded him that there were still good people in the world. People who valued kindness over cash. People like the man he used to be, and the man he was becoming again. But his good mood didn't last long. When he arrived at his apartment building, Eloise was sitting on the steps. Eloise, you need to stop, Alan said firmly. I will, she said, after you hear me out. Please, Alan, 5 minutes. Against his better judgment, Alan sat down beside her. 5 minutes. I talked to your old boss at the delivery company, Eloise said. Alan tensed. You did what? I wanted to know how you were doing, Eloise continued. He told me you quit. He also told me you bought the company. Alan said nothing. His old boss, Mr. Peterson, had been ready to retire. Alan had made him an offer he couldn't refuse, but he'd asked Mr. Peterson to keep it quiet. You bought a delivery company? Eloise pressed. Where did you get that kind of money? That's none of your business. Alan, something changed, Eloise said. 3 months ago you had nothing. Now you're buying businesses? What happened? Alan stood up. Your 5 minutes are over. Did you win the lottery? Eloise followed him. Did you get an inheritance? Alan, you can tell me. We were married. We were married. Alan emphasized the past tense. Now we're nothing. But we could be something again, Eloise said quickly. If you came into money, we should share it. I'm still legally You're not legally anything, Alan interrupted. The divorce was finalized. You made sure of that. Eloise's face changed. The mask of remorse fell away, replaced by something harder. I deserve part of whatever you got. You deserve nothing, Alan said coldly. You left me when I had nothing. You don't get to come back now. I was your wife for 3 years, Eloise argued. I supported you. Alan laughed, a bitter sound. Supported me? Eloise, you complained every single day. You made me feel worthless because I couldn't buy you luxury bags. You told me my love wasn't enough. I was frustrated, Eloise said. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did, Alan replied. You meant every word. And you know what? I'm glad you left. Because now I know exactly what kind of person you are. Eloise's eyes filled with angry tears. So you did come into money, and you're just going to keep it all for yourself? I'm going to use it wisely, Alan said, something you never understood how to do. He walked into his building and locked the door behind him. Through the window, he watched Eloise get into her car and drive away, tires squealing. Thomas Thau called 5 minutes later. Eloise just called me. She's furious. She thinks you're hiding money from her. Let her think what she wants, Alan said. She's going to make trouble, Thomas warned. Let her try, Alan replied. I have lawyers now, good ones. The next morning, Alan woke up to 50 missed calls and 100 text messages. They were all from Eloise's friends, her mother, even her cousin he'd only met once at the wedding. They all said the same thing. Alan should share his inheritance with Eloise. She was his wife. She deserved it. He was being selfish. Alan blocked all of them and went about his day. He had a meeting with Patricia Reynolds to discuss expanding his investment portfolio. He had coffee with Rachel to talk about her charity. He had a life that Eloise was no longer part of. But Eloise wasn't done, not even close. 2 weeks after confronting Alan about the money, Eloise hired a lawyer. Alan was having breakfast when Thomas called, voice urgent. Bro, you need to check your email right now. Alan opened his laptop. There it was, a legal notice from Eloise's attorney. She was suing him for a portion of his inheritance, claiming she deserved compensation for their years of marriage. Alan called Patricia Reynolds immediately. I just received this notice, Alan said. Can she actually do this? Patricia's voice was calm and professional. Let me see it. Forward it to me now. While he waited, Alan paced his apartment. Could Eloise really take his money, after everything she'd done? Patricia called back 15 minutes later. Mr. Herzog, I've reviewed the notice. The good news is she has absolutely no legal standing. The inheritance came to you 3 months after your divorce was finalized. It's entirely separate property. So she can't touch it? Not a penny, Patricia confirmed. Her lawyer should know this. I suspect this is an intimidation tactic. She's hoping you'll settle out of court just to avoid the hassle. What should I do? We'll respond formally through my firm. We'll make it clear that any further legal action will result in us countersuing for legal fees and harassment. That should end this quickly. Alan felt relief wash over him. Thank you, Patricia. After hanging up, Alan realized something. Eloise wasn't just desperate for money. She was desperate for control. She couldn't accept that she'd made the wrong choice. That evening, Alan received a text from an unknown number. Please, Alan, we need to talk. This is Thomas. Not Thomas Thau, his friend. This was Thomas, Eloise's boyfriend. Curious, Alan called the number. Thomas answered immediately. Thank you for calling back, Thomas said, sounding exhausted. I know this is weird, but I needed to warn you. Eloise is obsessed with you. I noticed, Alan said dryly. No, you don't understand. She talks about you constantly. She's convinced herself that you stole her life, that you planned to get the inheritance and then divorced her. That's insane. She divorced me. I know, Thomas said, but she's rewritten the whole story in her head. She thinks you tricked her. She's talking about hiring private investigators, finding ways to prove the inheritance should be hers. Why are you telling me this? Thomas was quiet for a moment. Because I made a mistake dating her. She's not the person I thought she was. And honestly, after seeing how she treats you, I'm scared I'm next. You probably are, Alan said. Eloise doesn't love people. She loves what they can give her. I'm breaking up with her, Thomas said. Tonight. I just wanted you to know that she might get worse before she gets better. Be careful. After Thomas hung up, Alan sat in silence. He didn't feel victorious. He felt sad. Sad that Eloise had become this person. Sad that their marriage had ended this way. Sad that she couldn't just let him move on. The next day, Eloise showed up at Alan's new business, the restaurant he'd recently purchased. She caused a scene, yelling at him in front of customers. "You owe me," she screamed. "I gave you the best years of my life." The staff looked uncomfortable. Customers stopped eating. Alan remained calm. "Eloise, you need to leave," he said quietly. "I'm not leaving until you give me what's mine." Alan pulled out his phone and called the police. "I'd like to report a disturbance at my business." Eloise's eyes widened. "You're calling the police on me?" "You're trespassing," Alan said. "I'm asking you to leave. You're refusing. That's trespassing." Eloise looked around at all the people watching. Her face turned red. "This isn't over, Alan. You'll regret this." She stormed out just as police sirens sounded in the distance. Thomas Tao arrived 20 minutes later. "I heard what happened. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Alan said, "but this has to stop." "She's spiraling," Thomas observed. "She's lost everything. Her boyfriend left her, she can't pay her bills, she's facing eviction from her apartment." Despite everything, Alan felt a pang of sympathy. "I didn't want this for her." "I know you didn't," Thomas said, "but Alan, you can't save her. She has to save herself." That evening, Alan met Rachel for dinner. They'd been seeing each other for a few weeks now, taking things slow. She knew nothing about his inheritance. She only knew him as Alan, a guy who owned a small restaurant and cared about helping others. "You seem distracted tonight," Rachel observed. Alan considered lying, but he was tired of secrets. "My ex-wife has been causing problems. She found out I came into some money, and now she thinks she deserves part of it." Rachel listened without judgment. "That sounds stressful." "It is," Alan admitted. "The worst part is, I married her thinking she was different. I thought we loved each other, but I guess she only loved what she thought I could become." "That must have hurt," Rachel said gently. "It did, but I'm learning that sometimes the trash takes itself out." Rachel laughed. "That's one way to look at it." As dinner continued, Alan found himself relaxing. Rachel was easy to talk to. She was genuine. She asked about his day not to evaluate his worth, but because she actually cared. When Alan drove her home, Rachel turned to him. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "This money you came into, is it a lot?" Alan tensed. "Here it comes," he thought. "Why do you ask?" "Because I want to know if it changed you," Rachel said simply. "You seem like a good person, Alan. I just want to make sure the money didn't corrupt that." Alan was surprised by the question. "Do you think it changed me?" Rachel studied him. "No, I think you're still the same person. You just have more resources now to be the person you always were." Alan realized something in that moment. Rachel wasn't asking how much money he had. She wasn't calculating his worth. She just wanted to know if he was still a good person. "I inherited $13 million, Alan said quietly. 3 months after my divorce. Rachel's eyes widened. 13 million? Yes, and I haven't told many people because I wanted to see who would stick around for me, not my bank account. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. That's smart. People get weird around money. You're not weird about it. Should I be? Rachel smiled. It's your money, Alan. It doesn't change who you are or what I think of you. Alan felt something shift in his chest. This was what he'd been looking for. Someone who saw him, not his net worth. Would you like to come to a charity gala with me next month? Alan asked. It's for children's literacy. I thought of your book program. I'd love to, Rachel said. As Alan drove home, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Eloise's mother. Alan, please. Eloise is not doing well. She's been crying for days. She lost her apartment. She has nowhere to go. Can you help her? For old time's sake? Alan stared at the message. Part of him wanted to help. He wasn't cruel. But another part knew that helping Eloise now would only encourage her behavior. He texted back, I'm sorry she's struggling, but I'm not the person to help her. She needs to stand on her own 2 feet. Eloise's mother replied immediately, How can you be so heartless? She was your wife." Alan didn't respond. He turned off his phone and went to bed. The next morning, Alan woke up to news that would change everything. Thomas Tao called, voice urgent. "Alan, you need to see this. Eloise posted something on Facebook." Alan logged into Facebook. Eloise had written a long post. "My ex-husband inherited $13 million and is letting me starve. We were married for 3 years. I stood by him when he had nothing. Now that he has everything, he's abandoned me. He won't even help me pay my rent. This is the kind of man he is. Cold, heartless, selfish. If anyone knows Alan Herzog, please tell him that karma is real." The post had 200 likes and 150 comments. Most were from people Alan didn't know, calling him names, saying he should be ashamed. But there were also comments from people who knew the real story. His friends, his family, people who remembered how Eloise had treated him. Thomas Tao had commented, "You left him when he had nothing. You called him worthless. You told everyone he wasn't good enough. Now he's supposed to support you? That's not how life works." Alan's cousin had written, "Eloise, you divorced Alan because he wasn't rich enough. You don't get to come back now that he is." Even some of Eloise's old friends had turned on her. "Girl, I love you, but this ain't it. You can't leave someone and then expect them to take care of you." Alan could have responded. He could have defended himself, but he remembered something his great-uncle Edward had written in a letter Patricia had given him. "The people who matter will know your character. The people who don't matter will believe whatever they want. Don't waste energy on the latter." Alan closed Facebook and went to work. 3 days later, Patricia Reynolds called with news. "Mr. Herzog, Eloise's lawsuit has been dismissed. The judge called it frivolous. Her lawyer has been sanctioned for wasting the court's time." "What does that mean for me?" "It means it's over," Patricia said. "She has no legal recourse. If she continues to harass you, we can get a restraining order." Alan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "Thank you, Patricia." That weekend, Alan took Rachel to the charity gala. She wore a simple dress she'd bought from a thrift store. She looked beautiful. At the gala, Alan donated $100,000 to children's literacy programs. Rachel cried when they announced it. "Alan, that's incredible," she whispered. "It's what my great-uncle would have wanted," Alan replied, "using the money to help others." As they danced, Alan saw someone familiar across the room, Eloise. She was wearing a cocktail dress that looked expensive but outdated. She was standing alone near the bar, watching him. Their eyes met. Eloise lifted her glass in a mock toast. Alan nodded politely and looked away. "Who is that?" Rachel asked. "No one important," Alan said. After the gala, as Alan was helping Rachel into his car, Eloise approached. "Alan, can we talk, please?" Rachel looked at Alan. "Is this her?" "Yes," Alan said. "Eloise, this is Rachel." Eloise looked Rachel up and down. "Hi, I'm Alan's wife." "Ex-wife," Alan corrected. "We've been divorced for months." "Alan, I'm sorry," Eloise said, and for the first time she actually sounded sincere. "I'm sorry for everything, for how I treated you, for the lawsuit, for the Facebook post. I was wrong." "Okay," Alan said simply. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Eloise continued, "but I want you to know that losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. You were a good man. You are a good man. I just couldn't see it." "Thank you for saying that," Alan replied. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Eloise. I really do." Eloise nodded, tears streaming down her face. "You're happy now. I can see it. She's lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have her," Alan said, taking Rachel's hand. Eloise walked away into the night. Rachel squeezed Alan's hand. "That must have been hard." "It was necessary," Alan said. 6 months later, Alan and Rachel were engaged. The proposal was simple. A quiet beach at sunset, just the two of them. Alan had used his inheritance wisely. He'd expanded his restaurant business. He'd invested in Rachel's charity, which now served 10 cities. He'd created a scholarship fund in his great-uncle Edward's name. And most importantly, he'd learned that wealth wasn't about how much money you had. It was about who you shared your life with. 1 year after the divorce, Alan ran into Eloise one last time. She was working as a barista at a coffee shop. She looked different, humbler, quieter. "Hi, Alan," she said softly. "Hi, Eloise, how are you?" "I'm okay," she said. "Better than I was. I'm seeing a therapist, working on myself." "That's good. I'm glad. I heard you got engaged. Congratulations." "Thank you." Eloise made his coffee with shaking hands. "I really am sorry, Alan, for everything." "I know," Alan said gently. "I forgive you, Eloise." Her eyes filled with tears. "Really? Really? We both needed to move on. You taught me what I didn't want in life. That's valuable too." As Alan left with his coffee, he didn't look back. That chapter of his life was closed. He drove to Rachel's apartment, where they were planning their wedding. She opened the door with a smile, and Alan knew he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Not because he had $13 million, but because he had something more valuable. A partner who loved him for who he was, not what he had. And that was worth more than any inheritance. The end.